Can everybody hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Welcome to the Delaware County Board of Supervisors meeting. It's January 11th, 2022. Welcome to a new year. And we've returned from closed session, but we have not completed closed session, so we'll be going back into closed session after the board meeting. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Patty, I know you're on with us. Please take roll.
Supervisor Hemmingson,
Here.
Supervisor Starkey,
I'm here.
Supervisor Short,
Here.
Chair Howard.
Here.
I'll take note that Supervisor Berkowitz is absent.
Most appreciated. At this time, please join me for a brief moment of reflection. Thank you. Supervisor Henningsen, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Well, we're going to jump right into nominations and elections of the chair of the Board of Supervisors. And at this time, we'll entertain a motion.
I motion to elect Supervisor Hemmingson to be the chair of the board.
I'd second that motion. Okay, is there any other motions? condolences in advance, Mr. Henderson. Okay, if there's no other motions, let's go ahead and open up for public comment.
Chair, I do not have any online.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go ahead and bring it back to the board. Kylie, please pull the vote.
Supervisor Short,
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson,
Yes.
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Supervisor Starkey.
Yes.
You have a softer sip than I do. Yeah, that one's broken in.
Okay, thank you all. Okay, we're going to move on to a nomination and election of the vice chair. And if nobody's going to make a nomination, I would make a nomination for Supervisor Short.
I'd second that motion.
Are there any other nominations? Is there any public comment?
Chair, I'm not seeing any public comment online.
Thank you. Would you please poll vote?
Supervisor Starkey,
Yes.
Supervisor Short,
Yes.
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson.
Yes. Thank you. Introduction of new employees.
And today, Supervisor Henderson?
Nothing? Okay. Any actions from closed session, what will we report? None so far.
No action.
So we'll get a report out. At this time, I would request any deletions, corrections, or additions from board members to the agenda. In order to add an item to the agenda, the matter must have come to the attention of the county subsequent to the posting of the agenda, and the matter requires action before the next regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. Are there any such items? Seeing none, we'll move on. We're going to get to brief reports, please, and announcements from supervisors. And we're going to start with Supervisor Starkey.
Thank you, Chair. This is since December 14th, 2021, but I'll try and shorten it as much as possible. I attended a first 5 meeting, reviewed some ideas for a strategic plan. Amir Long, the executive director of First 5, shared her hopes for the upcoming plan that will include a focus on oral health hygiene, an initiative for that, an initiative for the maternal mental health, along with continued focus on school readiness and early literacy work. So we're really learning that we need to focus in on all aspects of the child's first 5 years of life. Toured Juvenile Hall. I'm grateful for Lonnie Raymond and Jordan Anderson, as well as all the staff at Juvenile Hall for taking some time to show me the facility and the strengths and the weaknesses of that building. I learned that Jordan Anderson has partnered with behavioral health to come up with some solutions of having behavioral health at the facility 2 hours every day. So staff utilizes the time for crisis management or assessments, but they're also incorporating structured behavioral health programming, which can preemptively reduce crises. So I am wanting to work with Chief Raymond, along with all other law enforcement personnel in the community, to develop a safe location for training to occur. I toured their current facility that probation is using, and I feel that we can find something more suitable to make the officers and the deputies who are protecting us in the community have the tools they need to train properly. So that'll be on my to-do list for 2022. I attended a Del Norte Healthcare District meeting. I logged into the meeting to support Amanda Hickson's request that the Healthcare District consider leasing a piece of property on Northcrest Drive so that the Community Food Council can apply for grants that could potentially fund a new food bank facility as well as a possible OES building. So Amanda's really playing a crucial role in so many things happening right now, and her vision for that building is inspiring. That was approved. The healthcare district did opt to lease that to her. I toured Battery Point Lighthouse. I spent an evening with Harlan Watkins, who is the point of contact for the Historical Society. We were able to spend some time discussing concerns about preserving the integrity of the historical monument and ways in which we can be prepared should a catastrophic event unfold like a fire. I think if there is a fire that happens on that hill, that if there is a high tide, firemen are not getting to that facility. So we're looking for ways in which that the lighthouse keepers have an opportunity to put out that fire should that unfortunately occur. So we're working with some staff to see if we can't find some grants through OES. I attended a board meeting with the Norte Economic Development Corporation, learned some information from them. I attended several city council meetings, including the last one on Friday, which they made the decision to return to virtual meetings pursuant to AB 361. I suppose the city council feels that in order for city businesses not to be halted, they need to allow for the virtual meetings. I attended a solid waste management meeting. Things continue to really evolve in my life around SB 1383 and how it's going to impact the overall operations of the county and the JPA. So we have almost, seems like daily discussions with regard to this, but we are working hard to make sure that all the agencies that need to be involved are involved. And a big shout out to Randy Hooper for really spearheading that and getting the fire lit for us. Last month, I announced that Caltrans was sponsoring a donut free and clear, meaning that you could bring your large appliances to the transfer station for free. We are still planning on doing that, but the dates have been pushed out to an unknown time so that Caltrans can apply for or can submit agreements for payments because it ain't no free ride. I attended 2x2 with the Yurok tribe, and we're just ongoing discussions with regard to how we can improve our relationships with them and get services down to the Klamath area. I documented the king tides. I think that is an important thing. It's a program that helps visualize future sea levels by observing the highest tides, which were January 2nd and 3rd of this year. I addressed some constituent concerns with regard to Point St. George. We're working on setting up a meeting with the agencies and individuals impacted by some of the reported issues. While we might not be able to address every concern brought to our attention, we're here to try. So I just want to encourage people that if you have something that you need us to do, we certainly like you to bring your complaints along with your solutions to our attention. I attended a local behavioral health board meeting. We're working on a data notebook. We got some information about an after-hour call log, their employee vacancies. And there is a board vacancy on the local behavioral health board, and it's a consumer position. So it's a fancy way of saying that we need people who have accessed these services in the past and benefited from those services because their voice is going to be important moving forward on how we structure services. There's an MHS stakeholder meeting scheduled for January 19th, February 10th, and February 22nd. So if you're so inclined, I encourage you to tune in and have your voice heard with regard to what mental health issues that you would like to see for this community. I spoke at a Rotary meeting and kind of gave them an update on some of the things that are happening in the county. And I want to just spend a minute expressing my gratitude for this past year. I've learned so much and I have so much more to learn. I'm fully available to do my best to serve this community in any capacity in which to make it better. So I want to just thank my colleagues. I just want to wish everybody a happy new year. And that is my report out.
Thank you. Supervisor Short.
Chair Henningsen, can I interrupt for a minute? So there's some audio problems with people online. They can hear what you're saying, but I guess it's pretty muffled. So I think the options are you can continue. It's getting recorded. Or if you want to take a break, we believe the issue has to do with the speaker system in here. We would need about probably 10 minutes to try to troubleshoot, but I don't know that I can necessarily fix it. But to be clear, from what I'm seeing is I can understand you. It's just pretty muffled online right now.
Okay, well, let's take 10 minutes then. We'll take a 10-minute recess. So we'll come back at 10:25 or thereabouts. Okay, everyone, we're back. I think we've got the problem fixed. If you're still having problems, please get a hold of anybody but me. Probably Dan would be the best. And we'll see if we can't get it fixed, but hopefully that's cleared up that that particular problem. So now we'll move on to Supervisor Short.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over the holidays, I traveled to Wyoming to see family and grandkids and had a wonderful time doing that. And outside of that and during that, I listened in on several city council meetings. Also attended a 2x2 meeting with the Yurok tribe to discuss some possible solutions for the county and the tribe down in the Klamath area. I'm in discussion with Randy Walls concerning a couple of different constituent complaints. I participated in the local roadway safety plan survey. I encourage everybody to do that, get as much information in that pool as we can about our local roadways. I contacted a supervisor from Trinity County concerning a resolution that they had passed. And even though I could not participate in it because I was in Wyoming, I listened in on the solid waste management meeting to, again, try and keep up on our progress toward our compliance with SB 1383. And similar to Supervisor Starkey, I also wanted to express my gratitude to this group. As a new supervisor, it's been an absolute pleasure working with all of you, and look forward to years to come.
All right, right on. After being here for a year, you can't call yourself a new supervisor anymore. Now you're an old hack. Supervisor Howard.
Thank you, Chair Hemmingson. I'd like to acknowledge quickly the passing of Leon Galkheimer, both a tribal member and a Korean War veteran that passed away this weekend. As we continue to lose our World War I and World War II veterans, I think it's important, even outside of Memorial Day, to honor the passing of folks that have served this country. Attended a Del Norte RCD meeting where we talked about the Ditson monitoring of Salmonids, which is down by the boat ramp, and the return of at least the Chinook run this year, and then the nominations that are actually on our board agenda today. Had some discussions around some tri-agency issues, and more specifically getting an item back on our agenda for some consideration here in 2022. Also met with both the Del Norte Trail Alliance and Green Diamond Resource Company on an ambitious project to promote mountain biking in our community, not necessarily on Forest Service, but on private lands, similar to what they do with some nonprofits in Humboldt County. I think it's a pretty dang good activity. More importantly, it brings mountain biking closer to town. And so we're considering a couple large Green Diamond parcels to actually start building some trails on where these activities taking place. And it was a good, fun discussion. Some discussions around the Proactive Financial Goals Committee meeting, which we continue to have, which I think hopefully will bear some fruit for the board to make some considerations here on very soon as it relates to our contributions associated with PERS. As Supervisor Hemmingson's aware, we're dealing with some issues at Lake Earl right now and restriction of hunting during waterfowl season that didn't go out for public comment. We're shocked and surprised that there's some unilateral decision-making associated with waterfowl hunting that was made in relation to dune grass or invasive weed treatments in that area, and the conflict with invasive weed treatment and waterfowl hunting. And it just, we're trying to get to the bottom of it. And our Del Norte County Fish and Game Commission is actively pursuing it and looking to write a letter to the board. We hopefully here in the near future, we could address some of these issues in transparency and see how it came about and try to strike a balance when there's very limited waterfowling hunting that takes place every year on the Lake Earl wildlife area. For the California State Association of Counties, I want to let everybody know that the executive committee reelected me chair of the Ag, Environment, and Natural Resources Committee meeting. It's a great honor to serve, and I think they felt a lot of promise coming out of our discussions at the annual meeting in Monterey, where we're strongly addressing issues around fire and agriculture. We're getting a lot of headway right now, not just with rural counties, but also suburban and urban, as it relates to the impacts of fire and especially smoke that affects everybody here in the state of California, but also in the United States when these large fires occur. So we're excited. We're going to have some meetings later this week and next week associated with this. In addition, an upcoming meeting on the sea level rise policy that I know we attended while we were down there. And I know there's a lot of concern, so I'm interested in exploring that a little further and seeing if this is an effective position or not, and maybe one we should stand against. On our agenda for discussion today, I'm not going to go into any detail now, but still pursuing at a very lightning pace, the fire safe regulations that the California Board of Forestry is trying to implement. These regulations are a huge burden on private landowners here in Del Norte County, especially those private landowners in the wildland urban interfaces. These have a potential, in my opinion, to be a taking of private property, and at least at a burden, a tax that would come down that could potentially prevent you from building on that private property, especially in these WUI areas. The county's been very active along with Humboldt County and the rest of rural California in trying to have a more balanced approach to implementing the legislation. But until recently, there hasn't been a lot of willingness by the Board of Forestry to listen. I think we're finally gaining some headway, and on today's agenda, we'll give that a little bit greater detail and discussion. With the recent earthquakes here in our community, in our region, I want to remind everybody that, there's going to be a lot of releases of energy off these Cascadia plates or these various plates out here in the ocean. And we need to remind ourselves that, especially here in Del Norte County, we are prone to tsunami. Lori Dangler's been writing quite a few articles on this recently and warning folks of this, but we just need to be cognizant that when these occur, remember your zone, remember where you're at, and remember to evacuate. It's also good to download the MyShake app, which is a free app provided by the state of California. It's an early warning system that should notify you about 5 to 6 seconds before the shake occurs. And it's a good one to have, but I just wanted to, as these continuous quakes have been occurring quite frequently here, I wanted to remind everybody to think about this, especially where we're at here in a tsunami prone area. Dealt with some constituent concerns in the Birch track for Supervisor Berkowitz related to ATV use. And I know the rest of the board got these concerns, and Larry DP from the California Highway Patrol was more than happy to go out there and address that and work with Randy Waltz also in trying to get those addressed. And so far, we haven't heard any additional complaints, so that was a good thing. I had a request come in from the Tolowadini Nation to help support the fish hatchery and a grant application, but it came in too late to add onto our agenda, so I'll probably just be addressing that personally as a board member to try to get that in on time, which was for the 14th of this month. Let's see. Definitely want to acknowledge what Darren brought up about the local roadway safety survey plan. Please take that if you have time. I think it's extremely important for us to be involved in how money flows into various aspects of our roadway safety and where we should concentrate some of our efforts on our public roads. So take the survey if you have time. And then I've also been talking with Tuolumne County supervisors that heard some of our discussions at the annual meeting. There's a policy that we rarely hear about, but it's a let it burn policy that the U.S. Forest Service has adopted. And the let it burn policy was a policy adopted several years ago, but basically recognize the fact that there's just not enough resources to go out there and treat the woods. The problem with this is that when we let it burn, because of our delinquency in getting out there and actually doing the treatments, there's too much fuel at this time. So we get catastrophic fire that ends up wiping out the entire forest instead of having a slow, cool burn, which is what you want to see. And so working with the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors might be looking to add an agenda item here in the future where we send letters to our Forest Service and specifically the superintendent requesting that this policy be looked at a little bit differently, and that the commitment of resources that seem to be about 95% put towards putting out the fire, 5% put towards fuels management, that they strongly look at flipping those in this day and age when fire is just destroying the state of California. at a rate of 1 acre for every 8 acres. So we really need to take a look at that. And with that, Chair Hemmingson, that's my report.
Thank you, Supervisor Howard. First of all, I'd like to wish everybody a happy new year. Hope the holiday season went well for you. I do have a few things that went on, although I did spend a considerable amount of time with family and friends over the holiday area. I still had to take care of some concerns. Had with the Dungeness crab season starting, had a risk assessment plan, a management plan having to do with whales for the Dungeness crab season. And we're continuing to do that. Had a Golden State Natural Resources meeting. Attended the Harbor, Crescent City Harbor District meeting over some issues, an ordinance that they're adopting. Had a Border Coast Regional Airport Authority meeting where we finally got to meet our director in person, our new director in person. And as Supervisor Howard said, we had a proactive financial goal committee meeting. Had some constituent complaints dealing with some animal control issues, as well as the hunting issues, as Supervisor Howard mentioned earlier. And that's about it for me. So we're going to move on now to a public comment period. And we are going to members of the public may address the board on matters which are within the jurisdiction of the board. If you are addressing the board regarding a matter listed on the agenda, you may be asked to hold your comments until the board takes up that matter, and we will be limiting your comments to 3 minutes. Is there any public comment? Come on up, Brandon.
Good seat for you there.
Head on.
Good morning. Just like to start by thanking you. Appreciate your service. Our community has lots going on, and we appreciate your time and commitment to our community, and we need your leadership. I'd like to start by requesting an additional item be placed on the agenda for January 25th. I'd like the board to discuss and take a vote on rescheduling the Board of Supervisors meeting. Having the meeting at 10 o'clock puts an undue hardship on constituents who are working and unable to comment. Working people pay the taxes that pay for the programs that you endorse, and public comment should be available for working families. I'd like to note a couple administrative issues. On the Del County website, government website, you guys had last board meeting on the calendar, December 28th. That's fine. I understand times are busy. If you're not able to make it, update the calendar, please. I see you have a Crescent City board meeting. Let's see, on the 17th. The city has it on the 24th. You can just clarify that, please. Just simple scheduling things, but good governance. I attended the recent public health meeting. I tried to get on Zoom. My comments weren't able to be heard. I did appreciate Mrs. Snow reading my comments, so thank you, but request that dial in suggestions be considered in the process of board meetings. Zoom isn't available to everyone, so it needs to be a dial-in option. In regards to the agenda. Can anyone tell me what health ordinance the county's operating under? What date? The health order? There's various health ordinances. Can anyone tell me which date? You have posted on your agenda a August 26th health ordinance. There's been a health ordinance since then. How come you're not using the most recent one? Oh. What's these defund DHHS?
Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate it.
Is my 3 minutes up?
Yep.
Because I plan on commenting on each agenda item
Yep.
with DHHS.
Fine.
$1.2 million.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Chair, if I may, I do have a couple online.
Sure.
Karen, you are on.
Hello, this is Karen Sanders, and I live in the county District 2, and I want to draw your attention to two bills that are going through the assembly right now. They would both adversely affect Del Norte residents and businesses. The first one is AB 14. It's called Guaranteed Health Care for All, and that is right now being heard today under Jim Wood as the chair of the Health Committee. And what that basically does, it would create a California Guaranteed Health Care for All program, or CalCARES, which would be a comprehensive universal single payer healthcare coverage and healthcare control system in California. This came up a year ago and defeated right away, and hopefully it will be done again. But how to pay for this is the big deal of covering 40 million people, or 40 million residents. But they're working on that as well today. And it's called ACA 11. It's taxes to fund healthcare coverage and cost control. And it would basically just hurt our businesses, not only in Del Norte County, but throughout California, which adds an annual tax of 2.3 on businesses, plus another 1.25 tax payroll for companies that have 50 employees or more. And then also a 1% tax for employers who employ or who pay employees more than $49,000. Plus, there's another series of tax hikes that includes levies on income for people that make $149,000 up to, and that would be 0.5%, and then up to a 2.5% income tax for anybody making over 2.5 million. But the Taxpayer Association, the California Taxpayer Association, opposes this because it would bring in new revenue of $1.63 billion per year. So what I'm asking, because of our Assemblyman, Jim Wood, I ask respectfully if the Board of Supervisors would reach out to him and let him know how this would hurt not only our businesses, but our residents as well. Because if the businesses have to pay all this extra, there's going to be less jobs. They're not going to be able to survive. So anyway, and this would be AB 1400 that he today at 1:30 is hearing. So anyway, thank you so much for your time and all your efforts. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, please.
Robert, you are on.
And Kylie, can you start the timer when they start talking? I don't have mine.
I'll do it. It's on my side. I
Oh, okay,
messed up
sorry.
on the last one.
Robert? If you're talking, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Oh, hi, this is Robert. Here we go. Hi, guys. Still advocating for the cannabis tax to be dedicated to a purpose for disadvantaged youth. I've been watching the government for about 12 years, and our general fund's grown, at least $10 million in that time. And it generally goes to, I believe Hemmingson and Howard are on one of our fiscal boards talking about financing accrued pension debt. And so if we keep going on like this, we won't have services. We'll have people in the future paying for the services of the past. And so that's why I want to start saying, when we see growth in our general fund, that we attribute it towards our needs in our community, which is impoverished children, I think is the best one you can really make an effect on. And so I know you also get taxes from Elk Valley Rancheria, and I'd like to see that money as well be used in a representative fashion rather than just going into the general fund. I saw on the consent agenda that it was approved to use general fund money for a feasibility study to use Barrow Boys Ranch, which was a really well reviewed. You don't see schools and you don't see penal institutions being well reviewed. They usually are 1 or 2 stars. And Barrow Boys Ranch is a 4.5 star organization. People that had historically used it, which were usually not from our county, unfortunately, actually had decent experiences there, if a lot of the time. And so, it's sad it's not being used, but I don't think tourism is the right use for it. The tourism kind of happens naturally. We're a road trip nation. I sent you guys studies to show that tourism is the lowest paying industry in the United States, and we only get seasonal tourism here. And so that even makes it a bit worse. We're not like a cruise base or anything like that. And so at a certain point, rather than giving money, the harbor wants to give money to the Chamber of Commerce, everybody wants to give money to the Chamber of Commerce. You're making jobs for people that never are going to get the service, of been disadvantaged youth in our community. And they're just going to go right into minimum wage seasonal work. And so you need to, I know there's lots of services for disadvantaged youth in our community that are state and federal funded. And I'd like to see our general fund start to be chipped away to make contributions in those regards as well. Thank you for your time. Please consider putting it on the agenda. I won't be collecting them next year if you don't. And I already have to start making adjustments with inventory and that kind of thing if I want to stop. So you should, do something decent with the tax. I'd also advise you to watch the cannabis work groups that you guys composed. There's one from March 28, 2018, and the one before that where we talked about taxes, so you guys can understand why you're taxing pot and what the intention was. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Next, please.
One moment. Susan, you are on. You just need to unmute your mic.
Hello. Hello. Yes. My name is Susan Hubbard. I live in the Fort Dick area. And as one of the supervisors mentioned, they had heard about a dog problem that we're having right now. And neighbors are actively trying to find where these dogs live. So I just want to ask county support, our animal control officers, to help us identify and find out who these dogs are that are being allowed to roam free. And we've had so many cats killed now and many missing just in the last few weeks. It's been very frustrating for the residents.
Thank you.
Chair, at this time, I'm not seeing any more hands raised online.
Okay. Seeing no more public comment, we'll close public comment and we're going to move on to our 10:30 timed item, which is a COVID update from Dr. Stutz. Dr. Stutz, are you still on?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, great. Thanks for having me. Let's see, a lot of developments over the holidays and over the last couple of weeks. Our case counts have been climbing, as you guys have surely seen from the website. I think this week we are about 200 to 300% increase over our total active cases from last week. So right now, as of this morning, we were at 159 active cases. We've been averaging about anywhere between 10 and 40 new cases a day. This is a significant increase from prior to the holiday season. And that's undoubtedly because of Omicron, as well as the holidays and everyone's exposures during the holidays. It seems pretty certain that we're seeing an Omicron surge at this time, but over the past couple of weeks, it has become apparent that it just isn't leading to the hospitalizations that we were seeing during the Delta surge. So I remain optimistic that this isn't going to lead to such an impact to our hospital system as we had seen back in late summer of 2021. And I'm hoping that this is going to be a rapid increase in cases followed by a steep decline, given how rapidly Omicron replicates and is transmissible to other people. And I'm sure you guys saw the new isolation and quarantine guidelines issued by CDC and then subsequently by CDPH. I do want to align our quarantine guidelines here with those. And I think if I still don't see a bump in hospitalizations by the end of this week, we're going to align ourselves with those recommendations. Ideally, this would be a situation where we would have a lot of new cases, but very few hospitalizations. This might be the turning point in the pandemic where we see a much less virulent but more transmissible virus pass through our community and immunize, quote unquote, a whole bunch of our citizens who aren't vaccinated, and which might lead to, an improvement in our COVID situation in the future. Historically, the SARS-CoV-1 and MERS viruses that are related to SARS-CoV-2 have gone through this process where they've become they've caused less morbidity and mortality and become more transmissible. And we did speculate early on that this might be what would happen with SARS-CoV-2, and at least with the Omicron variant here, that does appear to be happening. So I'm optimistic that that this is going to be a turning point in the pandemic, where we can start to back off some of these tight isolation and quarantine guidelines. Right now, we only have, as of this morning, 2 hospitalizations, which is up from no hospitalizations prior to the holidays. Isn't really enough data to really tell if we're going to see a spike in hospitalizations. I believe we probably will see a small spike, but I'm hoping that it won't be enough to really overwhelm our hospital or mortuary. So some additional data, just to let you guys know that we have had also, along with the increase in cases, an increase in breakthrough cases. About 49% of our new cases over the last week have occurred in fully vaccinated individuals, which is consistent with what we've been seeing with Omicron variant around the country. And the other half, obviously, are in non-vaccinated individuals. About 30 to 40% of these new cases are in young people ages 0 to 20 as well. So that's all the data that I have right now for you guys, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, great. Before I turn it over to questions from the board members, I'm going to ask the public if they have any questions, brief questions for you. So I'm going to open that up at this time. Are there any questions for Dr. Stutz? You need to come up here, Brendan. Thank you. Got another fancy sign.
I don't know if you can see that one. Fire Stutz. You guys know him? I mean, like, why is he our moral compass?
Comments,
What-
Brandon.
did we-
Well, we're not going to answer questions
Okay.
unless you
What
got it
health
directed
ordinance- what health-
to
what
Dr.
health
Stutz.
ordinance are we under?
Dr. Stutz?
What health ordinance are we under?
Yeah.
Well, there's a statewide health ordinance, and
What, the county, please?
the county ordinance. Can you be more specific?
The date of the county board health ordinance.
Which one?
That's what I'm asking. Which one are we governing under?
Which health officer order? Is that what you're asking?
You've had several ordinances. Which one are you governing under?
Well, the most recent order, I don't know the exact date, but the most, are you talking about the masking order? Or are you talking about, which one are you talking about?
How many orders do you make up?
Brandon, I think there's a difference between an ordinance and an order. I don't know. I mean, ordinance is.
The ordinance has an order in it.
Yeah,
I'm not sure where you're going either.
yeah, I don't know where you're going
So
with
you're
this.
gonna-
What's the
so
question?
you're-
What is the question you're after? What do you want to know?
I'm wondering if we have a health ordinance threatening to separate families for not wearing a mask.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that, so.
You're not aware that the most recent health ordinance does not threaten to imprison citizens and fine them?
I guess I haven't seen that happen, so I don't know.
You haven't seen the health ordinance?
I guess I'm
DHHS,
confused.
Department of Health,
Is it an order or is it an ordinance? Is it an order by the health officer?
I think that's what you're getting.
there's a dated one for August 26th. There's also one dated November 3rd.
I would assume that we're under the latest one.
Then why does your agenda have August 26th?
I can't answer that question.
Do we?
And I'm
do we
not
govern by
here
assumptions?
sometimes. But what are your questions?
Is our science an assumption, Dr. Stutz?
Sorry, what's the question?
Is your science an assumption?
That's a really difficult question to answer in the limited format that we have here. Are there assumptions in science? Yes, there are assumptions in science.
Has science been wrong in pandemics before?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it possible you're wrong now?
Oh, that's always possible.
How can you be so righteous to impose your thoughts on our community? And you
Well,
guys should be ashamed.
So that is is it Brandon? That is the job, right? So health officers are employed by the county to make some of these decisions and answer some of these questions. So it's contained within the statutes of California to have a health officer in every county.
It's a statute that you can arrest me?
So I have no authority to arrest anybody.
You're threatening me and my family that you could arrest me for not wearing a mask. You're harassing me. You're coercing me.
Yeah, I don't see a question there. Brandon, your time's up. So thank you for your comments. Are there any other questions other than board members for Dr. Stutz?
Sure, I'm not seeing any online.
Okay, questions from board members? Valerie, anything?
No, I just want to make sure that I heard you correctly, that if you see that this surge, if Omicron isn't really putting the hospitals at risk for overcrowding or whatever, that seems contrite, but that you'll consider aligning Del Norte County with the CDC guidelines. So isolations will be down to 5 days and whatnot.
That's correct. Yeah, we're running into an issue with the Omicron variant right now, that our isolation and quarantine, it isn't very effective at preventing transmission because Omicron is so transmissible, but also that we aren't seeing the kind of hospitalizations that we were seeing with Delta. So it doesn't make sense to have these lengthy isolation and quarantine times where all we're doing is keeping people out of work. And if we're not seeing the morbidity and mortality impact from the virus, then we shouldn't be quarantining people as long as we are. Since we're always kind of behind schedule compared to other counties, it's really hard to kind of predict what's going to happen to us. But in other counties, lengthy quarantine and isolation times have been causing staffing shortages at businesses and hospitals, mostly because people are being held out of work, even if they're not very asymptomatic, or if they're asymptomatic or not very symptomatic. So yeah, I'd like to reduce the impact on our economy and our lifestyle by aligning ourselves with those shorter isolation and quarantine orders. That isn't going to impact our health. We are going to see a little bit of an impact in terms of, even if we don't see the hospitalizations, we're going to see an impact on our EMS system and on our emergency department, because even though people may not end up being hospitalized from Omicron at high rates, they're still probably going to visit the ER and seek medical care and use the EMS system. So that's probably inevitable that we're going to see an impact there. But if we aren't seeing hospitalizations and deaths from Omicron, then we need to start backing off on some of these guidelines, some of these more restrictive guidelines.
Great, thank you very much.
Supervisor Short.
Yeah, Dr. Stutz, just so happens my high school son was excluded from school this morning because he had a close contact with another pupil. And his first question to me was, "But Dad, I've already had the virus. Why do I have to stay out of school?" So that's my question for you. Why do we give no credit or credence to people who have had COVID in the past? Why are they not on an equal playing field with vaccinated people?
Yeah, so many of the health officers in the state, including myself, have been pointing this out to officials at CDPH and asking that prior infections be given similar treatment to being "quote unquote" fully vaccinated, right? It just hasn't happened for whatever reason. I think because of the difficulty in predicting what's going to happen with this pandemic thus far. I think vaccination and having had an actual infection are probably equally protective for future infections, but for how long? 6 months, 9 months, a year? We don't really know. I agree with you though that hasn't been given the same level of importance as vaccine when considering the guidelines and isolation and quarantine guidelines. I agree with you that should be taken into account.
So you don't have the latitude to rule on that for Del Norte County?
I can only make our guidelines more restrictive compared to the states. I cannot make them less restrictive unless the state has given us carte blanche specifically to change our guidelines. So whatever their orders are, I can only be more restrictive than that rather than less restrictive.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Got it.
Sorry about that. I just have people commenting stuff in the chat on Zoom, and I'm telling them to raise their hand when they have questions. This came when the public comment was asked for Dr. Stutz, and a woman had a question that says, when Dr. Stutz says fully vaccinated, does this include booster shots? I just didn't want to have that get lost.
Okay.
Sorry for interrupting.
Question. Thanks for asking that question. That's a great question. In terms of our numbers that you'll see on our public health website, those fully vaccinated equates to just fully vaccinated without a booster. Although the definition for various industries is starting to change. For example, for healthcare workers are now required to have a booster as well within a certain amount of time. So there's some general discussion among the health officers that we want to get away from this terminology of "quote unquote" fully vaccinated, because it makes people think that they're protected once and that that's all they have to do. But in reality, as I've been saying, repeatedly during this pandemic, is that what's going to happen is that we're going to have a booster shot, "quote unquote" booster shot, or a new vaccine, probably on the order of every year from now going forward, just like we have with influenza. So fully vaccinated really isn't going to be the right term. Really, it should be current vaccination or up-to-date vaccination, just as we are with our influenza vaccine. I get an influenza vaccine every year, and I don't call myself fully vaccinated for the rest of time. I just tell my employer that I've been vaccinated with this year's influenza vaccine. That's what's going to happen most likely with COVID. We're going to have probably a yearly COVID vaccine that at least I'm going to get every year.
Thanks. Supervisor Howard? You got anything? Nope. Yeah, Dr. Stutz, this is Jerry Hemmingson. The hospitalizations that we have, are they seeing the same type of symptoms as the I guess with this Omicron variant as the Delta? Are we seeing as severe of complications?
Yeah, I mean, the general consensus is that no, we aren't seeing the same level of morbidity and mortality complications from this version of SARS-CoV-2, and that's a function of how different it is, I think, from the Delta version. There are something like 50 to 60 mutations in Omicron as compared to Delta, which probably had fewer than 10 mutations compared to the original strain that we first saw. So it's really quite a different virus, and as a result, we're not seeing the same characteristics. And I can't really say for our own county because we haven't had enough cases of it here. I haven't really spent enough time in the emergency department over the last 2 months to really say, yeah, I've seen Omicron, and yeah, it seems different. But other counties and other states are reporting that the symptoms are different, and the morbidity and mortality is different, is better.
So as we're seeing this being a little less severe, are we going to see some, even though the numbers may continue to stay high, will we see some loosening of the restrictions, whether that be with masks or as Supervisor Starkey said, with confinement? Are we going to see some in the near future? Are we going to see some lifting of some of these restrictions?
Statewide or countywide? Absolutely.
County.
Yeah, absolutely countywide. This is my personal feeling on this, is that I've been waiting for this moment in the pandemic where we would see a shift to a situation where COVID is not as deadly as it once was. It can be managed, just like the flu was before the COVID pandemic hit. Before COVID, we had influenza deaths every year. We had 20 to 60,000 influenza deaths every year in this country. We had also somewhere between 200 and 600 pediatric deaths from influenza every year in this country. If we can get COVID morbidity and mortality to resemble those numbers, my argument is that then we're through the pandemic. It's become endemic, right? It's now a part of life. Nobody seemed very bothered about the influenza deaths that we had every year before the pandemic. So if we can get the COVID numbers down to resemble those numbers on the same order as those numbers, then I would argue that we're through the pandemic and that we should lift some of these restrictions.
So what would be a timeline on that? What would we be looking at if you can predict that out?
Yeah, well, and this is just hearsay. I don't know for sure, but the word from other counties and states that have been hit and other countries that have been hit by Omicron before we were is that the surges are much more rapid. They spike very quickly and then they decrease very quickly, and they don't cause a whole lot of hospitalizations. So rather than the 2 to 3 month surge that we saw in late summer here with Delta, I'm hoping that this is going to be a month, less than 2 months for sure, and that we'll be back to where we were. And fingers crossed, that'll be the end of this.
Great, thank you. Anything from any other supervisors? Anything else online? Kylie, one last shot.
No, Chair, there's not, and I'm sorry for interrupting.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, Dr. Stutz. Appreciate your information.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to our 10:40 timed item, which Prop 68 per capita grant update from Kim and Alan, I guess. Are they on?
Yeah, I'm here, Chair.
Okay.
I'm trying to get my camera on so you guys could see me, but maybe.
Oh. Okay, you don't, yeah.
Mine will be pretty quick. This has been a long time coming, the Prop 68 grant per capita. We've applied for a lot of the competitive grants in the past. I'll say we just got edged out by the city for this year's grant, but we're going to keep trying for those. This one was based upon per capita, so all we had to do is jump through the hoops and we were going to receive it. We jumped through all the hoops. Everything is ready to go. We're in the final processes of getting the contracts dealt with so we can actually send the project out to bid. And then at that point, we'll be able to get the septic system out at Keller that has been failing for the past 5 years to something that is more manageable, and we can hopefully include some new bathrooms and showers with the system.
Great. Anybody had any questions for Alan?
Yeah, that was my only question. So this could include new showers out there at Florence Keller. Is that correct?
That is our ultimate goal.
Okay.
I know that the ground out there is less than good. It's actually very clay based. We're hoping once we get this going that and get an engineer on board to design it, they'll be able to tell us exactly how much effluent we'll be able to put through the system. And at that point, they'll be able to determine if showers are feasible. I mean, showers are the plan unless it's shut down by the ground.
Great, thank you. And good job on this, Alan. Good follow through to both you and Kim.
Thank you.
Supervisors, anything else? Any public comment? Kylie?
Chair, I don't see any online.
Okay, great. Thanks, Alan. Appreciate it. Good job.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Great.
Okay, we're going to move on then to the consent agenda. Items 1 through 17.
Chair, can I make a small correction to number 7?
You may.
The board report, inadvertently, I call myself the president of the law library. That hasn't been true for a few years now.
Okay.
I didn't update the form very well. And the resolution says it's for the year 2020. It's for the year 2022.
Okay, I'll make those changes.
Chair, may I interrupt?
Yes, you may.
Joel, on item number 7, since it's actually in the recommendation that it's for 2022, do I still need to make note of that?
Yeah, I mean, you make note of the minute and then we can
We need
just
to change it.
cross out the date in the resolution.
Okay.
The resolution itself also says the board chair is TBD. So we'll be amending it by hand anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 17. I'm going to recuse myself on item 4 for business relations with one of the board members.
Okay.
From Alexander Family Farm.
I will second.
I have a motion and a second, and I'd like to have some discussion on item number 5. I'm not going to pull it, but I'd like to talk to, since you're here, I'd like to know, we don't have any OHV park in Delmar County. And this is, it appears to me that the grant is talking about education and enforcement. Is that what we're looking at here for this? It looked like that's what the grant money was going to be used for, was for time. And I wondered if there was any thought in pushing this a little bit farther. I know there's monies available to actually get an OHV park in process. I don't know where you go about enforcing things where, unless it's just illegal use of public lands or public and maybe even private lands. where are you looking for this enforcement money to go?
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Our goal with this is just to provide some additional salary for patrols and for education. Even though we don't have designated OHV areas, there's a lot of roads that are back in the state parks area, in the national forest, that are used by many citizens with off-highway vehicles. Our goal is to do some education and some patrol to encourage safe use of these vehicles and to encourage responsible use of them, to stay on the graded roadways and not destroy any of the forested areas.
Okay, great. Yeah. And I think probably if we wanted to use those types of monies for an OHV park, we're one of the few counties, I think, in California that don't have a designated OHV park. So maybe that's something that we need to look through community development. But since this was brought up, it just stuck in the back of my head because I'd had these discussions. These guys used to come around once in a while from OHV state parks, and they would come up and we'd have some discussions, and I haven't seen them for a number of years. And so this just kind of brought it to my attention. So I'll look further into that. Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody have any questions for Sheriff? I'm sorry, I called you Randy. That's not very polite of me. Sheriff Walt says, anybody got any?
I get called lots of things.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any public comment on the consent agenda? Come forward. Sure. I don't.
Apologize. I guess I have to work these 3 minutes in quick. I'm not sure if we were able to find any resolution for what public health ordinance we were under. Why that would matter, maybe I'll put this here. Maybe I should just turn this way because it seems like you guys don't listen anyways. But public health ordinance, it says, please read this order carefully. Violations of a failure to comply with this order is a misdemeanor punishable by fine, imprisonment, or both. The Department of Human Health is victimizing our citizens. They are abusing children. They're creating hostile work environments by claiming they're going to arrest people and separate families is in fact a definition of domestic terrorism. And we cannot be complacent with this. Our constitutional rights mean more. Too many good people, men and women, have died for our constitutional rights. For you to just give them away to some medical assumption. See, you have over $1.2 million and more in your agenda for DHHS. They're making these problems. Their health ordinance is creating depression. It's creating more substance abuse. We can't continue funding this. Please. I request that action items 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 17 be tabled. I request the DHS provide verification of some of the statistics they're proving. They gave a presentation last month. Beautiful PowerPoint. It was great. 1/3 of their employees admitted they don't have trust in their leadership. The same people we want to hire to make people feel valued can't even do it themselves. 47% of the employees didn't feel like their department was inclusive. Health and Human Services, and they can't be inclusive? What is their job? Only 38% of their staff feel respected by their supervisors. That was their report. They gave an audit on themselves. Interesting. Justifying their salaries, they discussed the SWOT. Do you guys remember what that is? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Wow. Good job. What is their threat? To having their salary taken away? Not one mention of something that was tangible that they did. Not one family member.
Wrap it up, Brandon. You're out of time.
Where's my clock? I don't see my clock.
Right here. The big red
screen.
sign right here in front of you. That one.
I'd like to talk for 3 minutes on each action item.
You have been. You've been talking about the consent agenda, and that's our action. Thank you.
Are all these included in one vote?
Yep.
That's true. Please table this.
Kylie, is there any more public comment on the consent agenda?
Chair, I don't see any hand raised at this time.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from board members? Kylie, would you please poll the vote?
Supervisor Starkey,
Yes.
Supervisor Short,
Yes.
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson.
Yes, I need to recuse myself on item number 6. I have a conflict of interest. The company that's listed here is a customer of a company that I'm involved with.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to regular items. Item number, wait a minute here.
21.
Yeah, sorry. Item number 21, general government approve and adopt an ordinance adding chapter 16 related to providing and expediting streamlined process for electric vehicle charging stations, chapter 17. Heidi, are you going to speak to this?
Supervisors, thank
Sounds like
you
a good
for
thing to me.
having me back today. Yes, this is a returning ordinance. It was introduced at our December 14th meeting. As you said, it's to adopt an ordinance to add an expedited review process for electrical vehicle charging stations and for solar residential rooftop installations. This is something in practice that we have been doing. However, this will provide better information to the public by having it added to our website, better handouts, just generally better for the public.
Cool. And that was going to be one of my questions, but you already addressed it, is why do we have to make a special thing to make things expedited? Don't we expedite things as best we can anyway?
Yeah, yes, we do everything we can. This will just provide, more better checklist.
Oh.
So we have complete applications when the information arrives at our office.
Perfect. Thank you, Heidi. Any public comment on this item?
Chair, I don't see any online.
I would entertain a motion.
Chair, I'd make the motion to approve and adopt the ordinance adding chapter 16 related to providing and expediting streamlined process for electric vehicle charging stations and chapter 17 related to expedited permitting for small residential rooftop solar energy systems under Title 14 of the Norte County Code, and designate county council to prepare a summary of the ordinance for publication.
And I will second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion, questions? Kylie, please poll the vote.
Supervisor Starkey,
Yes.
Supervisor Short,
Yes.
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson.
Yes. Okay, moving on to item number 22, another approve and adopt ordinance, section 16.04-42 to the Norte County Code related to the correction and modification of a recorded subdivision map, and to designate county council to prepare a summary of the ordinance for publication. Heidi.
Good morning again. This is another returner from our December 14th meeting. If you have any questions, I am available to answer them.
Okay. Any questions from?
Heidi did a great job of explaining it last month. So
Great.
I would move to approve.
Okay. I have a
Second.
motion- I have a motion and a second. Any public comment?
Chair, I do not have any online.
Thank you. Seeing no public comment then, any further questions from board members? Kylie, please poll the vote.
Supervisor Starkey,
Yes.
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Supervisor Short,
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson.
Yes. Moving on to item number 23, approve and adopt an ordinance repealing sections 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25 of Chapter 4 of Title 2 of the Del Mar County Code relating to supervisorial districts as requested by Assistant County Counsel.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any public comment?
Chair, I do not have any online.
Any questions or comments from board members? Seeing none, Kylie, would you please poll a vote?
Supervisor Starkey,
Yes.
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Supervisor Short,
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson.
Yes. Okay, moving on to legislative and budget issues. Del Mar County as requested by the Natural Resources Goal Committee. Chris, did you want to speak to this? You want?
I can, and I'd love Ms. Kunstler to join us too from Community Development. As you know, the board's really been doing a good job keeping up about that. Matter of fact, on these fire safe regulations, being a leader in the state of California, as these are really just not issues that are going to affect Del Mar County, but going to affect rural California as a whole. Where it's going to land in our seat right now is really how development proceeds in the future here in Del Mar County and what land we have remaining to develop. And if some of the regulations as previously written go into place, they're going to impact whether or not you could even build on that home site that you dreamed about building on. Matter of fact, it's even going to affect probably how insurance rolls out here in the state of California. Many of us are already aware that the cost of insurance has either gone up or you can't even get it if you live in that wildland urban interface. And so how these areas are designated, more importantly, how the areas are developed, and if you can provide some defensible space, especially if you're backed up against public lands where they're just gonna let it burn, it's gonna be an interesting conflict that this board's definitely paying attention how these roll out. So I'd like Ms. Kunstler to join us as she's been paying a great deal of attention to this, as well as Rosanna Bauer, and with some excellent leadership from our UC Cooperative Extension representative, Yana Valenkovic, who's been a stalwart on helping us to understand how these regulations work, and more importantly, working with other counties to bring more of a coalition type approach on board. So we're not just doing this unilaterally, but we're doing it from more of a unified approach, along with our representatives from the California State Association of Counties and RCRC.
Yeah, and I agree. There's got to be some changes. The problem that I had with this was you're going to draft a letter and send along with that stricken out. In my packet, all I got was this.
No. That was actually the state minimum, that the draft regulations is what was included in the agenda. The letter has not been prepared.
Okay.
We've identified some greater, issues that we would like to bring up. However, we're still in the process of working with our partners at RCRC to, really develop a strengthened letter that represents all of our concerns. And I'd also like to add that Yana is available as well this morning to speak to this.
And I'd definitely like for her to join us if that's possible. I know she's done a deep dive into the most recent piece of this legislation. So if that's okay, Chair,
Absolutely.
I'd love her to join us, as she's been extremely helpful in this process.
Yana, are you with us?
I am. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes. Good morning.
All right. Well, I just want to say that I appreciate you giving us some flexibility in drafting this letter. We're working, quickly and expeditiously with our colleagues at RCRC as well as the Humboldt team to try and figure out how to, give us the best set of response given the very quick turnaround that's been requested associated with review of the new draft fire safe regulations. Considerable change has occurred since our last version, which I think was maybe June, and they've been dark now for many months working on a new draft. And, I will say we're getting to better places, but there are still some sticky issues that remain. And, with your approval, I think Heidi, Director Quinzel, and I will work to try and draft a letter that strikes that right tone of appreciation, because we need to keep our partnerships with the board there, as well as giving some more specific guidance. I think the primary issue we struggle with is that the definitions remain unclear, and how the interpretation of information is still vague. And so I think it will fall to Director Kunzel's team to be able to understand how to work with this. And without clarity, I think we'll be in a greater challenge than we'd all like.
Great, thank you. Any questions
Yeah.
for Yana or?
Yana, I'd love, since we oftentimes ride at a 30,000 foot level with a lot of these regulations, there's some areas of concern that I'd like you to specifically call out if possible. I know you shared some of those with Heidi and myself in Humboldt County most recently, but if you could take a couple of those areas of concern and really try to relate those and how they impact our constituents, that way the folks out there could have a better understanding to what we're talking about. And so it's just not rushing it over from a 30,000 foot level and us calling for the storm coming. I want folks to realize this is just not a storm coming. This affects everybody here in our community.
Okay, so the fire safe regulations have been around for a long time, and they get called out for revision. And what they're designed to do is really think about access both in and out, ingress and egress of a parcel, and the ability for fire apparatus to come in quickly and to get people out quickly. And so what the fire safe regulations really deal with things about road widths, lengths of driveways, turnarounds, weights that bridges can carry, signage, available water for fire suppression, gates, and whether gates have there's a secondary way to get through a gate if it's electronic and you lose power, those kinds of things. And they're directed at new development, like a formal subdivision and new development, but they also translate to existing lots and their development of existing lots. And that's where the primary challenge is in this element of a subdivision that has occurred, but there are existing lots that have not been developed. And so, is there some mitigatable way to work through the spirit of the regulations, even though there may be constraint on the existing lots? So for example, one-way roads, the ideal goal is to move to two-way access so that you have an alternate access form if one gets blocked. So conceptually, I totally understand that. But our dissected geography, our geology, the subdivision structure, at later date may not facilitate that going forward. In a new subdivision, we have more options to sort of think through those elements, but where you have existing parcels, it becomes more difficult. So, I think we're probably generally on board related to the idea that we need water storage and we need signage and we need a way to get through gates if they're electronic. Where it gets more complicated is if you need to develop something more than a driveway, do those roads need to be surfaced for year-round use, or is it only a concern in summer use? Do any bridges need to be constructed of entirely non-combustible materials, or can you deck them with wood, even though you may have a metal structure? And issues kind of around that line. Right now, the current draft says the maximum one-way road length is a half a mile, which, from a Del Norte perspective, I'd love Heidi's viewpoint on whether that's a major constraint. In Humboldt, that's a significant constraint. The bridge decking and bridge weight is a significant constraint. the ability to create turnouts and long-term and visibility pathways. I get the spirit of it, but it's a significant strain on existing roads. So that's sort of the nature of the challenge. The other element, which is interesting, is that there was a lot of county and residential response to an element associated with rebuilding a structure after loss from wildfire or other kind of natural disaster. And Santa Cruz County is a wonderful example of that. Many homes burned in the mountains of Santa Cruz County, and no one from a policy perspective wants to stand in the way of getting people back on their feet. But some of the roads in Santa Cruz County are barely roads. They barely pass a dually, let alone a piece of fire apparatus. The way the fire safe regs draft is written right now, there's a pass for rebuilding in an area that has experienced wildfire, but there's a much higher standard for building a new house on an existing parcel. So there's some inconsistencies in that, and there's emotion nonetheless, because no one wants, as I said, to stand in the way of what might be an impediment to get a community back on its feet. So I'm hoping that we can sort of thread the needle and strike the right chord through that, and through Heidi and Rosanna's analysis, to be able to think about how many parcels would be affected by those road links, how many bridges would be affected, and that sort of set of issues.
Thank you, Yana. I really appreciate you kind of giving a little bit more into the weeds approach so folks understand what this means.
Yeah, you bet. And Heidi,
Thanks.
please speak up if I missed anything there.
Thanks, Yana. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Heidi, you got anything else? Okay, great.
So my only question is that from my just research online, it looks like January 19th is the date that this letter needs to be in by. Okay, so it needs to be written and presented so the chair will sign it. We don't need to have it come back here for approval. Okay. How Yana explained everything was really helpful, so thank you, Yana. And I like that we could add the personalization of how that will impact us. So I hope that you guys will include all that information. So thank you.
Is that a motion?
Oh. I'll motion to approve. Hold on, I got to get the right wording. Approve and authorize the chair to sign and send a comment letter to the California Board of Forestry about the draft state minimum fire safe regulations 2021 regarding impacts to development in Del Norte County as requested by the Natural Resources Full Committee.
Okay.
And I will second.
I have a motion and a second. Any public comment?
Chair, I do not have any online.
Okay, thank you. Would you please poll the vote?
Supervisor Howard,
Yes.
Supervisor Short,
Yes.
Supervisor Starkey,
Yes.
Chair Hemmingson.
Yes. Neil, any other legislative or board members, any other legislative and budget issues on the table right now?
None today.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we did it then. Kylie, we got anything else?
Chair, we do not have anything else.
Okay. With that, we are adjourned. Next meeting is,
We're going to continue close.
oh, I'm sorry, we're going to close session. Our next meeting is January 25th. And we'll report any actions, not likely any actions from closed session.
No, there won't be anything.
Yeah, there won't be any reportable actions from closed session.